Income tax. Income tax is the government taking a cut of everything you earn before you ever see it. You don't get a choice. You don't get to opt out. The money leaves your paycheck before it hits your bank account, and most people spend their entire working lives paying it without ever fully understanding how it actually works. The system isn't random. It's tiered. You pay a lower rate on the first dollars you earn and a higher rate on dollars above certain thresholds. Those thresholds are called tax brackets. The confusion most people have is thinking that if you move into a higher bracket, all your income gets taxed at the higher rate. It doesn't. Only the dollars above the threshold get taxed higher. The dollars below stay taxed at the lower rate. A surgeon earning $500,000 a year doesn't pay 37% on every dollar. They pay 37% only on the dollars above the top threshold. Everything below gets taxed at lower rates, just like everyone else. Income tax funds roads, hospitals, schools, the military, and the entire administrative apparatus of the modern state. You can debate whether it's spent well. You cannot debate whether it's coming out of your check. Capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is what the government charges you when you sell something for more than you paid for it. You bought stock at $10. It grew to $50. You sell. The $40 profit is a capital gain. Now the government wants its share. How much they take depends on one thing: how long you held it. Hold for less than a year and you pay short-term capital gains, which is taxed at your ordinary income rate, the same rate as your paycheck. Hold for more than a year and you pay long-term capital gains, taxed at a significantly lower rate, 0%, 15%, or 20% depending on your income. That difference is enormous. A $100,000 gain taxed at ordinary income rates could cost you $37,000. The same gain held 1 year and 1 day could cost you $15,000 or $20,000. The tax code is rewarding patience. The longer you hold, the less they take. This is why wealthy investors rarely sell. They borrow against their assets instead, accessing cash without triggering a taxable event. The gain exists on paper. The tax never arrives. That's not cheating. That's understanding how the system actually works. Sales tax. Sales tax is invisible until it isn't. You see a price tag. You think you know what something costs. Then you get to the register and the number is higher. Sales tax is added at the point of purchase, a percentage of the sale price collected by the retailer and sent to the state. Rates vary dramatically by location. Some states charge nothing. Others charge over 10%. Some cities stack their own tax on top of the state rate. What counts as taxable also varies. Groceries are exempt in some states. Clothing is exempt in others. The inconsistency is deliberate. Every exemption represents a political decision about what the government wants to encourage or protect. The problem with sales tax isn't the rate. It's who it hits hardest. A person earning $30,000 a year spends most of their income on goods and services. A person earning $3 million a year spends a tiny fraction. The same 8% sales tax takes a proportionally larger bite out of the poor than the rich. Economists call this regressive. It falls heaviest on the people who can least afford it. Property tax. Property tax is the annual bill you pay just for owning something. Every year, regardless of whether you have a mortgage, regardless of whether your income dropped, regardless of anything else happening in your financial life, the local government assesses the value of your property and sends you a bill. Miss it, and they can eventually take the property. Unlike income tax, property tax never goes away. It doesn't stop when the mortgage is paid. It doesn't stop when you retire. It follows the property forever. Rates are set locally, which means they vary enormously by county, city, and school district. The assessment is supposed to reflect market value, but assessments often lag reality, sometimes working in the homeowner's favor, sometimes against. Property tax funds local services almost exclusively: schools, fire departments, police, roads, parks. The connection between what you pay and what your neighborhood receives is more direct than almost any other tax. High property tax areas tend to have better funded schools. Low property tax areas tend to have underfunded ones. The zip code you can afford determines the quality of public services your children access. Corporate tax. Corporate tax is the rate applied to a company's profits, not its revenue. It's profit. Revenue minus expenses equals profit. That number gets taxed. The U.S. federal corporate tax rate is currently 21%. But the effective rate, what companies actually pay after deductions, credits, and accounting strategies, is almost always lower, sometimes dramatically lower. Large corporations employ entire legal teams and accounting departments whose sole job is to minimize the taxable profit number. Depreciation schedules, R&D credits, interest deductions, offshore structures. Every tool gets used. Amazon, Apple, and other giants have paid effective tax rates in the single digits in certain years despite generating billions in profit. This isn't illegal. It's the tax code working exactly as written, shaped over decades by lobbyists who were paid to shape it. Small businesses don't have access to the same tools. They pay closer to the stated rate. Corporate tax sounds like a business problem. It isn't. When corporate taxes are low, the government raises revenue elsewhere, usually from individuals. Inheritance tax. Inheritance tax is charged on wealth transferred from one generation to the next after someone dies. In the United States, it's called the estate tax. It only applies to estates above a certain threshold, currently over $13 million for individuals. Below that threshold, nothing is owed. Above it, the federal rate reaches 40%. That sounds punishing. In practice, very few estates pay it. Wealthy families use trusts, gifting strategies, life insurance structures, and family-limited partnerships to transfer wealth in ways that minimize or eliminate the tax entirely. The estate tax has been described as a voluntary tax for the wealthy because the tools to avoid it are widely available to anyone with a good estate attorney. Critics argue it's double taxation, money that was already taxed as income getting taxed again at death. Supporters argue it prevents dynastic wealth concentration and forces some redistribution with each generation. Both arguments have merit. What isn't debatable is that the people who most need to worry about it rarely do, and the people it was designed to affect have largely engineered their way around it. Payroll tax. Payroll tax is the tax you pay to fund Social Security and Medicare. It comes out of every paycheck before you calculate income tax. In the U.S., the combined rate is 15.3%. If you're an employee, you see 7.65% on your pay stub. Your employer pays the other 7.65% on your behalf without you ever seeing it. If you're self-employed, you pay all 15.3% yourself. That's the self-employment tax. The money goes into dedicated trust funds, Social Security for retirement and disability benefits, Medicare for healthcare after 65. There's a cap on Social Security contributions. Above a certain income, currently around $168,000, you stop paying the Social Security portion. That cap means someone earning $168,000 pays the same dollar amount in Social Security tax as someone earning $16 million. As a percentage of income, the payroll tax is massively regressive. The more you earn above the cap, the smaller the share of your income it takes. The system was designed to fund specific programs, not to be progressive. Understanding that distinction explains a lot about why the tax burden falls the way it does. Value-added tax. Value-added tax, VAT, is a consumption tax applied at every stage of a product's journey from raw material to finished good. It doesn't exist at the federal level in the United States, but it's the dominant form of taxation in most of the world. In Europe, VAT rates typically run between 17% and 27%. Every business in the supply chain collects VAT on what it sells and deducts the VAT it paid on inputs. Only the net difference gets sent to the government. The final consumer pays the full accumulated VAT in the purchase price. VAT is extraordinarily efficient from a government collection standpoint. Because every business in the chain has an incentive to document what it paid, tax evasion becomes harder. The paper trail is built into the system. Critics of introducing a VAT in the U.S. argue it would be regressive, hitting lower-income households harder as a share of spending. Supporters argue it would raise enormous revenue with lower economic distortion than income taxes. Whether the U.S. ever adopts it is a political question. Understanding how it works is simply a financial one. Sin tax. Sin taxes are levies placed specifically on goods the government considers harmful or undesirable: cigarettes, alcohol, gambling, sugary drinks, cannabis where legal. The stated purpose is dual: raise revenue and discourage consumption. The logic is that if something costs more, people will buy less of it. In practice, sin taxes are complicated. Addiction is not price sensitive. A pack-a-day smoker doesn't quit because cigarettes cost $12 instead of $8. They just spend more on cigarettes and less on something else. Sin taxes are also among the most regressive taxes that exist. Tobacco and alcohol consumption as a share of income is higher among lower-income households than wealthy ones. The tax designed to discourage harmful behavior lands hardest on the people with the least financial flexibility. Governments justify sin taxes partly on the basis that harmful behaviors create public costs: healthcare, emergency services, lost productivity. The person who smokes creates costs for the healthcare system that non-smokers don't. The sin tax is an attempt to price those external costs into the product. Whether it works depends on how you define working. Tariff. A tariff is a tax on imported goods, paid at the border by the company bringing the product into the country. The foreign exporter doesn't pay it. The domestic importer does. And the domestic importer passes it on to the consumer in the form of higher prices. Tariffs are the oldest form of government revenue, used for centuries before income taxes existed. Today they serve a different purpose. They're primarily used as trade policy, not revenue tools. A tariff on imported steel makes foreign steel more expensive, which makes domestic steel more competitive. In theory, this protects domestic industries and the jobs they support. In practice, the cost is paid by every industry that uses steel: car manufacturers, construction companies, appliance makers. Their costs rise. Their prices rise. Consumers pay more. Tariffs almost always cost more jobs in downstream industries than they protect in the targeted one. They also invite retaliation. A tariff on Chinese goods prompts China to impose tariffs on American goods. The trade war escalates. Both countries' consumers pay higher prices. Both governments claim they're winning. The supermarket receipt tells a different story.